So in today's video, President Trump absolutely refuses to go along with this 60 Minutes reporter who was looking for a gotcha moment, ladies and gentlemen, trying to play dumb as far as to what Democrats in the media have been saying, and that this gunman Cole Allen mentioned in his manifesto. And now you have Democrats in the media, they're playing off like they had no clue as far as to what this guy could be talking about. At least that's how this reporter tried to frame it. And President Trump wasn't having any of it. He cut it off real quick and called her out on it. And so let's get into that, plus a whole lot more. Take a listen.
The so-called manifesto is a stunning thing to read, Mr. President. He appears to reference a motive in it. He writes this, quote, administration officials, they are targets. And he also wrote this: I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes. What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people, horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein or other things. But I said to myself, I'll do this interview and they'll probably, I read the manifesto, he's a sick person, but you should be ashamed of yourself reading that, because I'm not any of those things.
Mr. President,
and I
these
was
are
never,
the gunman's words.
Excuse me. You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes. You're a disgrace. But go ahead. Let's finish the interview.
The other thing that he wrote in
disgraceful.
I love it. I love it. Because don't play in my face is basically what the president just said. We're not going to do this today. We're not going to do this today where you're going to say, this reporter, she's trying to pretend and play dumb. Oh, so you think he was speaking about you, Mr. President? Give me a break. As if the media and Democrats haven't been spending how much time on these Epstein files, on trying to create as negative an image of the president as possible. And now she's going to sit there and actually sit there and say, oh, so you think he was speaking about you? And so rather than go along and she's hunting for her gotcha moment, he just calls her out on it. Like, no, we're not doing that today.
The other thing in the manifesto that I think is worth looking at in terms of determining his motive is he had been staying at the hotel since Friday. He checked in, he said he had cased the place, and he wrote, what the hell is the Secret Service doing? And he wrote this, quote, I expected security cameras at every bend, bugged hotel rooms, armed agents every 10 feet, metal detectors out the wazoo. What I got is nothing. He wrote, like, this level of incompetence is insane. Sir, you have already had two attempted...
Well, he was pretty incompetent, too, because he got caught. And he got caught pretty easily. So I'd say he was pretty incompetent, too. I could take any event having to do with security or anything else. I can always find fault. Those guys did a good job last night. They did a really good job.
I mentioned that because, again, as his motive, and you brought this up, he had social media accounts that had anti-Trump and anti-Christian rhetoric.
You should read. Why don't you read all the anti-Trump? Why don't you read it? You just did, so why don't you read it?
Well, he had a lot of anti-Christian rhetoric. He was part of a group called the Wide Awakes. He had attended a No Kings protest in California.
No Kings. Yeah.
What did security tell you about what may have been his motives?
The reason you have people like that is you have people doing no kings. I'm not a king. What I am, if I was a king, I wouldn't be dealing with you.
Yeah, and that just goes to show how pointless those rallies really are, because like he just said, if he was a king, he wouldn't even be dealing with this reporter. She wouldn't be able to say the things that she said. The media wouldn't be able to push the narrative that they push. Democrats wouldn't be able to constantly speak negatively and say all the things about the president that they can constantly say, calling him a fascist, calling him a dictator. If he was a king, then none of that would be possible. But yet you have people like this gunman, Cole Allen, who he clearly wasn't working with a full deck, because he was attending those No Kings rallies, buying in and believing into the narrative, the message that the Democrat Party and the liberal media have been pushing. Yeah, and so they're acknowledging the fact that his manifesto clearly lays out his motivations, that this was anti-Trump in nature. And so that part isn't even being disputed. It's not even up for debate. But at the same time, you got Democrats in the media, they're still trying to act like this is some who's who mystery. Like, we need to do a deep investigation just to figure out what was already spelled out. And so that brings us to Barack Obama, who decided to chime in and posted, although we don't yet have the details about the motives behind last night's shooting at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, it's incumbent upon all of us to reject the idea that violence has any place in our democracy. It is also a sobering reminder of the courage and sacrifice that U.S. Secret Service agents show every day. I'm grateful to them and thankful that the agent who was shot is going to be okay. Barack, give me a break. This isn't a murder mystery. We know exactly what his motives were. And so you have Barack Obama, who decided to post that after an abundance of information had already came out about this guy, as far as the manifesto, as far as to his background, his social media, the things he was into, attending a No Kings rally, the different groups that he's been a part of, his radical leftist ways. And yet you still have the former president, Barack Obama, who wants to sit here and say, well, we don't quite yet know his motivation, ladies and gentlemen. Let's take our time and make sure we just figure out exactly why he was doing it. And so, ladies and gentlemen, quite frankly, this is just Democrat hypocrisy on full display. The idea that Barack Obama is pretending as if he's just clueless to why this guy did what he did. I think we all know if the shoe was on the other foot, it was a MAGA Trump supporter, and it was going after a Democrat. We already know how this story goes. We already know the things that the left, that the legacy media, that Democrats would be out there saying. But instead, now they're out here talking about, well, it's happening on both sides. We got to calm down the rhetoric, and above all else, violence is never the way. Yeah, after you pretty much go out every day and talk about how the president needs to be eliminated, it's warfare, constantly saying things that fuel the flames of hate in this country. And then Democrats want to pretend as if, well, they're just clueless. They just, I don't know where this guy could have come up with all these things that made him do this. We need to figure it out.
You're a former FBI agent. What do you make of the man's writings that he sent to family just before the attack?
Well, look, you and I have covered so many acts of violence where there is often a lingering question about what was a motive. And sometimes that's laborious work for law enforcement to try to dig into that. You take, for example, the attempted assassination against President Trump last year in Pennsylvania. To this day, there are still major questions about the motive, very mysterious. This is not that, Kate. I mean, everything that we're learning about this person from his own purported writings, he essentially lays out what the motive is. That's his deep animus for the president, for members of the Trump administration. He goes in this long kind of delusional ranting manifesto, which I won't get into to amplify, but he basically has a target list. And he goes so far as to think, okay, people are going to criticize me for doing certain things. Here's my rebuttal to each of those points. And this is what FBI profilers typically call the typical grievance collector, someone who appears that they're so motivated by grievances that they then decide to act on violence. That manifesto will certainly be critical evidence in his prosecution.
Yeah, so you just heard that. And so let's get into this next part, because as I mentioned before, Democrats are trying to play this game of now they're suddenly condemning political violence, even though they've been demonizing President Trump and the administration day in and day out. And so let's jump into this clip where you have Fox News. They pretty much call out a few Democrats by name, playing brutal clips of them doing exactly that, demonizing the president and his administration. And so let's take a listen.
Governor Tim Walz, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, just a few of the Democrats who put out statements condemning political violence after the shooting. They say it is far too pervasive and has no place in America. Yet, we've heard this from those very Dems.
Is Donald Trump an existential threat to democracy? He is an existential threat to democracy.
The former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, said, "No one has ever been more dangerous to this country than Donald Trump, and he is a fascist to his core." Let that sink in, and don't be a damn bit afraid of saying it, because that's exactly who he is.
An authoritarian, criminal presidency fueled by corruption and bigotry and an ascendant right-wing extremist movement. We will send a loud message to President Donald Trump that his authoritarianism is no good here.
Wow. Can you imagine any other country on this planet that has as much freedom of speech as we do in America? Just look at that and look at the hate. But still, we go forward as a nation. Some in the party, though, are taking a stand, a strong one. One Democrat congresswoman posted, quote, "Please stop trying to murder the president." Jason.
Yeah, so you just heard that. And so even though we can bring up several clips, as you just heard right there, that's just an example of Democrats saying hateful, harmful, demonizing the president, saying these type of things. You still have networks in the liberal media like MS Disinformation who they want to push the narrative. They want people to believe that it's the president's divisive rhetoric. He's the one that pushed this gunman over the edge to go out and decide to try and assassinate President Trump. Yeah, take a listen to this.
America would be in a better place right now if it had a president who was willing to be a part of the solution, a part of the calming, a part of the moving us away from the edge that we're hanging off of, and going back to what we always used to view the president as, someone who is an exemplar of our better selves, of who we like to think of ourselves as a nation and as a people. And right now, we do not have that, in my opinion, in President Trump. And instead of the chief of staff talking to the Secret Service about what happened on Saturday night, in addition to talking to the Secret Service, I really wish she would pull the president aside, because that is her job, to have the tough conversations with him and say, Mr. President, here is what you can do. Here is what we can do as an administration to lower the temperature.
You know, I always find statements like this interesting because they sound good, but when you really break them down, they don't hold up the way that he thinks it is. First off, this idea that the president is supposed to be some perfect example of our better selves, give me a break. That's more of an ideal than reality, ladies and gentlemen. Every president, depending on who you ask, reflects part of the country, yes. But then they also clash with the other part. That's been true for decades. Second, when they say we don't have that right now, what they really mean is they don't like the style or the messaging. And that's fine. That's their opinion. But let's not dress it up like it's some sort of universal standard everybody agrees on, because it's not. We already know there are plenty of people out there who are perfectly fine with who the president is. They see him as someone who tells it like it is, being his authentic self, whether you like it or not. And so when you hear them saying, lower the temperature, here's the question. Is this the standard being applied evenly? Are we applying this to Democrats and Republicans and Democrats? Are we holding the media to the same expectation? Or is it only brought up when it's convenient? Because you can't have a situation like we've been having, like you saw earlier in this video, where one side gets to constantly use divisive, destructive, harmful, hateful rhetoric and language. But then you say to the other side, hey, you guys need to make sure that you tone down the language, tone down your rhetoric. That's not consistency. That's selective accountability that we would obviously expect from MS now. And also you'd expect that from the ladies on The View, who now are out here saying ridiculous things like, the Trump administration has experienced the fear needed to pass gun control laws because apparently criminals who are about to go out and break the law are very concerned about not breaking the law. But yeah, take a listen.
But you know, now that room was full of some of the most important political leaders in the country right now.
Right.
Now they know, they've lived it in their own flesh, the fear that our school children go through.
Yes.
Now they know what it's like to have to jump under a table the way that school children jump under a desk. And we are a country that is vulnerable to this. We have now seen shootings in malls, in churches, in temples, and Walmart.
Yes. We saw it with the Republicans.
And so, you know, I still don't understand how Congress took no action after Sandy Hook, after 20 children between the ages of 6 and 7 were killed. But maybe now that they have felt the fear themselves, they will do something.
But what I don't understand is,
Yeah, and right on cue, you got a room full of people clapping for something that literally makes no sense because, sure, people who are about to go out and commit heinous acts of violence, the very thing on their mind is obeying the law. The guns are never the problem. It's the people who are the problem. If someone wants to get their hands on a deadly weapon, newsflash, they will get their hands on a deadly weapon. It's not a matter of if, it's only a matter of when. And so this idea that always comes up as far as, oh, we got to come up with new gun laws. The reality is, and this is how you know these people do not live in the real world. When you're dealing with somebody who wants to commit a heinous act, when you're dealing with somebody of that mentality, of that mindset, do you think access is going to stop them? No. They'll find a way. It will always be an underground market for these things. And so, okay, now you make it harder as far as for citizens and for people who want to obey the law to be able to get access to weapon to protect themselves. But now you've also now just made the underground market for those weapons that much more profitable. And those people will still find some way in order to get their hands on a weapon. It's going to continue to happen. But these people don't understand that or get that. They want to find some way and try and shift blame somewhere, president, gun laws, something to point the finger at the president instead of what the problem really is, which is in part them looking in the mirror at themselves and the things they say as media personnel, the things that Democrats say as the opposition because they do not like what the president is choosing to do, the direction he's moving the country. And so here we are, ladies and gentlemen. But those are my thoughts and the update. Now let me hear from you. Drop your comments down below. You know, I appreciate when you guys chime in. You enjoy the content, smash that thumbs up, subscribe for more. And as always, until next time.